Hey everybody, I'm your host Eric Mueller, and welcome back to the Eric Mueller Show, the podcast where we explore what makes any successful person's inner clock tick. Do you have big ideas that you just can't seem to put into action? Do you want your ideas to stand out as unique solutions in the world, but struggle to find your target audience? Today I'm bringing a pharmapreneur onto the show to talk about discovering your niche when founding a business or starting a new project. Peter Koshland is the founder and CEO of Koshland Pharm, a custom compounding pharmacy based in San Francisco, California. Through his 20-year career as a pharmacist, Peter has seen the profound impact that high-quality compounded medicine can have on the lives of patients. This discovery is precisely what led him to build a business focused on the delivery of this exact solution. Since its opening in 2009, both Koshland Pharm and Peter have been recognized as leaders in the compounding pharmacy field. In 2013 and 2014, Koshland Pharm was named as one of the 100 fastest-growing Bay Area companies by the San Francisco Business Times. Peter was also awarded the Innovative Pharmacist and Outstanding Young Compounding Pharmacist of the Year in 2013. Today, Peter leads a dedicated team of healthcare professionals who work with doctors and patients on individualized, integrative therapies that make a huge difference in the quality of these patients' day-to-day lives. He is also a sought-after speaker for organizations and serves as an assistant clinical professor of pharmacy at the UCSF School of Pharmacy, where he also earned his PharmD. Get ready to discover how to find your niche and spark your big ideas into action. Let's head on over to the interview. All right, so welcome back to the Eric Mueller Show, the podcast where we explore what makes any successful person's inner clock tick. Today I'm welcoming a businessman and entrepreneur who carved out his own business niche in California. He's also a pharmacist, and he's the founder of Koshland Pharm. Peter Koshland, welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks, Eric. It's great to be with you.
It's great to have you here. You are one of a few pharmacists that have been on this podcast, and each one has kind of a different area of expertise. There are pharmacists that listen to the show here, but not everybody's a pharmacist. So I always like to just kind of pick the brain and see where it goes, how we might learn some unique new tips on how to remain successful, basically. So I want to first ask you, as a businessman, what advice would you give someone that wants to pursue founding a new company? How does someone know that an idea is worth pursuing?
That is a really excellent question. I wish I had a lot of history of really being strategic and thinking about product market fit and writing a really lock-tight business plan before I opened my pharmacy, but I didn't do any of that. I did write a business plan kind of against my will, but what really started this was a real passion for what we're doing, just almost like this is like my life's calling kind of passion. And I had no idea it was going to turn into what we have here, but I did know that I had to bring it to the world. And when I discovered some of the medicine that we do here and the fact that nobody was doing it, and there was a lot of misinformation out there about certain aspects of healthcare that were really, to me, seemed really important. It was just something I kind of almost had to do. And interestingly, we kind of opened this business in 2009, at kind of the bottom of the Great Recession. And almost every person I talked to who had some business acumen was like, don't do it. This is the worst time. We're a cash-based business. We're a cash-based pharmacy, for crying out loud. Who's going to pay cash for their prescriptions? And, I just like, you know what? I just have to do it. I just have to. And interestingly, they were all wrong. Our business grew so fast that we struggled to kind of keep up, in fact. So it was almost, I was really prepared for this really long haul. I'm going to hunker down and really preserve cash and just ride it out until we can get to barely profitable. And the exact opposite happened. When I say we struck oil, we came in and all of a sudden this prescription started flowing in ways we had not expected. So it was a passion thing. It was just really feeling connected to what we were doing. And it's interesting because even to this day, I still feel the same way. I mean, I was just talking to somebody about, some business. I connect with other business people, and it's like, what's your why? Why do you do what you do? And a lot of the people in that group have this real core feeling of it's for one colleague, it's about my employees. I want to give these people this opportunity here. And for me, it's about the patients. It's like, I can help people get well who didn't think they could. I know I can, and I have to bring this to the world. So that was it. I mean, it wasn't really a strategic thing. And I think maybe I got lucky more than anything because I just came at the right place at the right time with the right products and the right services. So, yeah.
It makes me think, there's a better way to say this. I'm not going to quote this as perfectly as the phrase that I've read, but when you have that hard work and passion, when that finally meets an opportunity, that can become what some people call lucky, or you have success in a way. So that inspires me, at least listening, to be patient. And right now, I mean, obviously, you got a lot of things on my mind. I'm sure people listening do as well, if you have an entrepreneurial spirit. But having some patience and just kind of letting something come to you as you work towards it as well at the same time. But to not get stressed. Did you ever feel like stressed out earlier in your career where you were like, I don't know where I want to be in 10 or 15 years? Or were you at least thinking, ownership is probably on the radar? I guess where did that come into your mind?
Yeah, I think I was just loving it. It was just like, I can't believe I'm actually pulling this off. What I was going to mention, one other thing that I think is interesting about being successful as a startup, going back, 13 years, thinking back, is I had a couple other colleagues who opened similar time, and all three of us were quite successful early on. And I was talking to an industry guy who knew all of us, and they said, "Well, how come we're doing so well and some other people aren't?" And we started talking about our personal lives, and all three of us had little kids. We didn't have any really other job prospects, and we were going to make it work. Not just because we were passionate about our business, we didn't really have a plan B. It was all the chips on the table. And I think when that is the case, I know for myself, I gave it everything I had because I didn't want my kids to not have food on the table. I didn't want to go back and work at a chain drugstore. So I think that aspect of it was actually really helpful in retrospect, that I didn't have an other, kind of, if this doesn't work, I'll go do this. That wasn't an option. And I think it really focused me. So yeah, I don't even remember the first part of the question, but I thought that was worth mentioning too, is I think that plan B can be a real drain of the focus and the, just the drive to I'm going to do everything I can to make this succeed. And that was how I felt at the time. And it was just a lot of fun. It was a lot of hours. I had a little baby, my poor wife. She was so patient with me. She knew this was my dream, so she kind of went with it. But we had a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old at home, and I was working till midnight every night because we were growing so fast. And we're now we think back, how did we even survive that time? And we did because we had no other choice, basically. So
right,
that was it. Yeah,
failure was not an option for you.
It wasn't an option, and it was amazing the resources that I could draw from when that was the case. It really was amazing. It was, just give it everything I got. And, we're successful now. So I think that was a part of it. There was some luck, there was some be at the right place at the right time. And just at that time, just really, we're going to make this work. We're going to make this happen. So. Right.
Yeah. Well, and you shared a sentiment that is similar to some past guests for me, and that's their work ethic and how many hours they may be putting in on any one given day or week or month. So if you said work until midnight, so what time are you starting on those days early on in your startup? How many hours a day were you roughly putting in at that time?
I really wasn't putting in the 80-hour weeks. As a healthcare provider, as a functional medicine practitioner, I knew I needed sleep if I was going to be successful. So I had to get my 8 hours. I tried not to work too much, but sometimes the business just pulled me in. So I was probably working 45, 50 hours early on.
Okay.
And I quickly got myself to 40 hours, and I still work about 40 hours a week. So it wasn't about putting the hours in. I think it was really about making sure all my activities were really going towards that goal of succeeding, whether it was developing the website, and I was doing everything. I was picking up the phone, I was checking prescriptions, I was developing the website, and slowly I've kind of shed some of those jobs over the years. But yeah, it was just a matter of just making sure everything was getting done and really paying attention to, the presentation we had to make to the world as we were new and kind of presenting ourselves. Are people getting their prescriptions on time? Are they happy with us? Are the doctors knowing we're here? All that kind of stuff. So that was really what our focus was.
Yeah. And that is a great point as well, because it makes me think of marketing and how you can kind of share the word. So if you have a great product but nobody knows about it, that's not the best thing as an entrepreneur. And you had mentioned earlier your company grew really fast. And in 2013, 14, you were named one of the top 100 fastest growing companies in the Bay Area. And that's an area that is flush with startups. That's San Francisco, California. So how did you market your business, Peter? And which tactics did you find most successful to put out this unique product? And we'll get to the uniqueness of it being that it's a compound-only pharmacy. But what did you find effective with marketing?
For us, it was getting in front of doctors. And I think it's interesting in your pharmacy background. And so we're not physicians, right? We don't prescribe. Right. But we have a ton of value to bring to the healthcare space. And we're in general underutilized, especially in the retail and community setting. And so getting in front of doctors and just really saying, listen, I'm building this business to make myself available to you as a practitioner. And there's a bunch of stuff we can do that you probably never even heard of, but will be really helpful to your patients. Because in general, most doctors are in it because they want to help their patients get well. And even though they're in a system oftentimes that, puts a lot of constraints on that and they feel stressed and they're trying to crank through patients and things like that, it's very rewarding to still get that sense of impacting a patient with therapy or with just, being, and so to kind of bring that to the table was really, we got a lot of good response from that. It was like, oh, tell me more. And sometimes it was about just try this one thing that we do. And it's like, wow, that thing really, my patient really got better. So tell me, what else do you guys do? So it's kind of building that conversation with doctors. And that's really how we built the business. There was some patient stuff. We were very cognizant of online reviews and making sure people were just generally happy on the customer service end. But that was really more of a business maintenance strategy. The growth came from physicians recommending us to their patients.
And at the core of that, it's that relationship building and networking that I'm sure you found successful, in your pharmacy student life and as you went into your professional career, and getting in front of people and being able to communicate well is kind of an innate quality of a retail pharmacist. You have to be able to do that. And I've had extensive retail pharmacy experience throughout school and into the beginning of my career too. And I know that you have to connect with patients, doctors, people that know a lot about certain things. People, some patients maybe don't know as much as others. And how do you balance that? Do you have any advice for if we have a pharmacy student listening that knows they want to go into ownership or someone that's in a different field that knows they want to get into business? From that networking standpoint, what can you share from your experience that might help that person?
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind when I think about getting in front of doctors is I just remember early on in my career being very intimidated by doctors, especially experienced ones, because they're just like, don't waste my time. So I had to build up a sense of my own value. I knew I had to walk into their office saying, listen, you may or may not want to work with me, but I know I've got something for you. Right. I know what I'm worth, right? I think sometimes you get tested a little bit where it's like, well, what are you here for? If you don't want what I have, I'm not going to waste your time. So wait, hold on a second. Tell me more. So I think it kind of starts with that kind of a sense of your own worth, and then really being a good listener. That listening is 90% of it, because when I could start the conversation and say, hey, I'm from Koshland, we do compounding, blah, blah, blah. And now tell me about your most difficult patient, or tell me about what, is frustrating you in medicine today. And we just start a conversation that way. And oftentimes my mind starts thinking of compounded medications I could recommend, but I don't just jump in. I want that dialogue, that opening, because I know I'm going to be talking to him again and again and again, or her again and again and again. And we can just kind of keep that going. So it was really a lot of listening and question asking early on, and then kind of strategically saying, well, actually, why don't we try this with this patient and see how it goes? And I'll follow up with you. And that was it. And some of these people I talked to early on were still in conversation 13 years later, wow. Talking about patients, talking about our families, talking about, life, the pandemic, whatever. So it's been just an ongoing conversation.
And you can never really underestimate the power of an organic connection like that. I think kind of where my mind goes with business, and I'm sure, people that have interest in the tech space, you think of all these techniques that you see people doing on social media and running Google ads and all these different inorganic ways to garner following. And I just think your business could have 10,000 Instagram followers, but not one of them even buys your product. It's having organic following is so crucial. And I think that's really how you did that. I think that's really impressive.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's a trap to be too formal about it. It's okay to be kind of goofy and just it doesn't have to always have a game plan and kind of. And I felt like that just kind of broke down some of those barriers. And we were just like, oh, we're just a couple of people talking about something we're both passionate about, which is medicine or whatever it is. So I think that was helpful early on to kind of just have that low key approach in terms of just the presence.
Yeah, friendly conversation. In other words, that's
yeah, exactly.
Great way to just kind of break the ice and make it informal. And yeah, so Peter, I think another piece that's I think really important to bring up is, and you mentioned it earlier, but you're a compounding only pharmacy, and you had mentioned that it's cash based. So I think to the non-native pharmacy ear, that might not make a ton of sense, and that's okay. But basically, would you just share why it's important that you're not going through the third party or the insurance side of healthcare, which most people think of retail pharmacy and using their insurance to get a prescription?
Well, third party won't pay for what we do, first of all. And to be perfectly honest, you can't really, well, I shouldn't say you can't. It's very difficult to run an independent pharmacy in a third party system. And it's one of the weird business situations where the payer sets the price, basically. And that's what's going on in the third party system. I'm processing a prescription. They're going to give me $5 and they can either take it or leave it. That's really how it works for pharmacy. And it's why you just don't see a lot of mom and pop shops anymore. It's not because they didn't like being pharmacy owners. It's just they couldn't survive anymore. And so we're one of the few kind of niche type pharmacies that can survive without third party because what we do is so specialized, because it's so customized, and there's enough people who need what we do and are willing to pay for it, quite frankly, that we can survive as a small business still in the pharmacy space. So it's the third payers have made that an impossibility for the mom and pop stores, unfortunately, because I started out in those, and it was a really neat community asset. Here in San Francisco, I worked at a small pharmacy, and we knew everybody by name, and people came and asked the pharmacist health questions, and that kind of has disappeared from the city for the most part, which is a real shame. But that's the way it's gone.
It's changed, yeah. And anybody that is curious to read up more, if you just search the letters PBM or Pharmacy Benefit Manager, you can read news articles about the third party problem. Really is what it is with independent pharmacy. But thank you for shedding light on that, Peter. And kind of onto that topic of being a niche business. So how did you discover that niche? How did you discover that you wanted to go into the compounding space? Aside from the fact that the third party independent model isn't the greatest. Do you have any tips for someone as far as like striking that balance between not being too broad or too narrow, and really how do you know that it might end up being successful? Obviously, you don't know for sure, but
yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know if I think I've been kind of just following where the doctors and patients are leading me with this business in a lot of ways. For example, one of the therapies that we do a fair amount of, which is called ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, which it didn't even exist in my business 5 years ago. And the only reason it's a part of my business now is because 4 years ago, I met this doctor who was training doctors on this. And at the time, it was kind of an edgy, we're not sure if the DEA is going to like this. But I'm like, okay, I'm curious. I want to learn more. And then when we started talking to patients about it, patients were getting so well with this therapy. I mean, people who had severe depression, who had failed 4 or more antidepressant drugs, and it connected back to the core of why I started. I'm like, I got really excited about it. So then I started getting involved with this group and getting involved with training other doctors and things like that. So I think it was just kind of staying true to, why I started it in some ways, just following where opportunities led and making more connections. It all came through people. It all came through somebody saying, hey, do you do, like, I don't know anything about that, but let's have a conversation because, it could be interesting. And sometimes it's worthwhile and sometimes it's not. But I think that's really always served us really well to just kind of keep that opening for new opportunities. And does it connect? If it connects to our core value of serving patients, then we're going to put some effort into that and try to bring it into the business. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And another question that kind of comes to my mind with your business as a whole, and just thinking from it, from the success standpoint of starting a business like a startup, it was founded in 2009. What time of 2009? Beginning, middle, end of the year?
Our opening date was October 29th, 2009. So we're
Okay.
building the space out kind of middle of the year, getting our licenses and things like that.
Right. Okay. So you started in that fall area of 09. At what point did you know that Koshland Pharm was going to be successful? So, sustainable, successful, kind of two different things. I mean, you might have known, okay, this is gonna float. This is gonna be able to pay the bills and pay my staff. But when did you know, okay, I have a successful business that is going to be in the top 100 of the Bay Area? I mean, that's wild.
We were a real outlier in that list too. It was like all tech and like what the heck is this business anyway?
Yeah.
Like, that was an interesting celebration when we went and collected our award for that. But it was very gratifying to be in that. So that is a really tough question to answer. I mean, we had a 5-year plan. Everyone writes their 5-year plan out. Of course, it's crazy to think what's going to happen in 5 years. But our plan was that we'd probably be break even in a couple of years, and we tried to just have enough cash to get us to that point. And we grew so fast, we got to that point in 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
But that wasn't the point that I thought we're going to make it, because we were so slammed and I was so understaffed that I was scrambling to get stuff out the door. So to be perfectly honest, it took me another 3 years to get my hiring mindset to like, this is a business that's going to grow and I need to actually like bring people in to help me run it and figure out how to grow it, in a way that's not crazy. So I think it actually wasn't until I got to that point that it's like, oh, okay. It's like, I can exhale. We're going to make it because I have the people I need. We're actually getting stuff out the door without staying till midnight or whatever we had to do. It wasn't when the money came in. It was more the sense of the business being like in a way that was like not crazy.
I figured there'd probably be a feeling tied to that, not necessarily a monetary metric, but just kind of you felt it in your bones. You're like, this is going to go, Yeah,
it was like an exhale. It was like the idea of like, I'm not pushing this to the finish line. Now it's like, it's going on its own accord to the finish line. I don't know if that makes any sense. Yeah,
absolutely. And Peter, really like kind of a core focus of my show. So you got a successful business. I really like to explore what makes that successful person's inner clock tick at their core. So I like to kind of tease out and ask, what is the one single driving force that keeps your inner clock ticking towards success? And then just share, if you can, what you define success to be. And it could be related to your business, personal, however you want to tailor that. But those two questions, I really think shares with the audience, a unique part of your story.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. It's something I need to give a lot of thought to. But what comes to mind is, I think in a lot of ways, our industry is really misunderstood. And probably, if it's not unknown, it's known for the wrong reasons because of bad things that have happened in our industry. What's really unfortunate about that to me is that I feel like what we do is one of the most important and powerful healthcare dispensers, healthcare providers around, because we're really tackling some of these worst cases. I mentioned the ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. There's just lots of things we do that is really impactful for people. And so I think I'm really motivated now. I think our business is successful. I really appreciate the opportunity to create a great place to work for my employees, just a place I want to work. So that's really gratifying. And then outside the four walls of the pharmacy, it's really about bringing this to people and really shifting people's understanding of what we're doing, so that if this is what they need, there's no barrier to them having access to what we can do. And I just feel like the need is so great. I feel like our healthcare system is so broken. It's not providing a lot of options for people to feel good about themselves, about their health. It's just like, we're going to patch you up and have you take a bunch of drugs so that you don't, have a heart attack tomorrow, but you still feel terrible. And I don't like that. I don't think that's right. And I think we need a fundamental shift in how we think about that. And we have a big role to play. So will I ever achieve that? I mean, I don't know. I have that vision in my mind that someday we're in California. I'd love our name to be recognized as a place that's really promoting this idea that you can be healthy, and we've got tools for you to achieve that. That's possible for every single person, whatever that means for them. So that keeps me motivated.
Right. And if you like just even a one phrase statement of like what success means to you, or what is it, if you were to say, I am successful to the world, what would that mean to Peter Koshland?
Boy, I think if people recognize our name up and down the state because we have a great reputation and we've helped somebody they know or themselves personally, that would be success. That would be success for sure.
Have that brand recognition and that.
Yeah, have that brand recognition in the right way, in the way that's like, oh yeah, that place, my cousin got something from them and it was awesome.
Right.
Or I heard about you from a friend, whatever. I think, and not so much for my own ego because, it's my name, but it's really more for just this. I feel like what we're bringing to the table, I want that to be in people's consciousness as like something that's available to them. And that would be a huge sense of victory, I think, if that was kind of the zeitgeist.
Right. And circling back to the beginning of this talk, when I asked, how do you know if an idea is worth pursuing? I think I have at least kind of my own answer to that, tailored from what you just said. And if you are passionate and know that you are providing something worthwhile, that idea is worth pursuing 100%. So if someone's listening and has something in their mind that they're just like, this is valuable to people, you got to go for it. And because I think your story is perfect testament to that. You started going for it, and you clearly are providing something that's making people healthier. They're probably having options to take on new therapies that are certainly not commercially available because you're compounding them. But
right.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important piece for anybody here listening that, Peter exemplifies that to a T.
It works for me. That's all I can say. And I feel like the passion is contagious. People can sense that. And then, from whether it's an employee getting on board with you or whether it's a doctor I'm talking to, that does help to have that. And I think it is part of the success, recipe. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And from an employee culture standpoint, so you're a manager of, you have 5 pharmacists on staff with you and some technicians and other ancillary staff?
Yeah. Right. About 35 staff all in. So yeah.
Okay. What have you found to be maybe the most challenging aspect, being the business owner, but also like the manager on the ground, like the person in those 4 walls of the pharmacy that's making the day-to-day operations work, at least the beginning, while you were growing the business? Yeah.
The challenge with growing from a perspective of somebody like me who started it, I was like the only employee here on day one, and then now we're 5. So it was continually learning to take on a new job. And shedding the task jobs and moving into leadership jobs. And, now we've come to a place where I have managers who run different departments, and I kind of check in with them, and I don't really do a lot of day-to-day checking or anything like that. But it took a long journey to get from I'm doing everything. I'm even coding the website in Dreamweaver to I don't do anything but try to be the cheerleader for my managers and keep them motivated. So that's been a really challenging trajectory. And I think a lot of people who take that trajectory have these kind of points where you have to kind of jump over the chasm from the old you to the new you. And I can't say I'm not done with that process. I'm doing a lot of networking with other CEOs and reading books. And I've got some interesting guests on your podcast too that have shed some interesting light on, leadership and, what your job is at the top of an organization. So I'm still working on that. I think it did help that we really, and my wife helps me run the business and she does a lot of the HR and talk about this all the time, but we really wanted to make this a great culture and a great place to work. And I knew I wanted that. Now, did we succeed in creating that all the years? No, definitely not. I think wanting it and creating it are 2 different things. You have to want it, but it doesn't mean it's just going to naturally flow out of you. And I think that was something I had to learn over the years, that we needed to really define what it was and then keep repeating it and demonstrating it and showing people where we're putting it into action. And that's still an ongoing thing. So it's just been a long learning curve. And I talk to business owners, in pharmacies like mine who are in this same kind of trajectory. And there's these critical points where you just can't run it the same way anymore. And you have to start with yourself, say, okay, I have to rethink of who I am in this business and then start doing the things you have to do that are new and be uncomfortable. So yeah,
right.
It's ongoing.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. I think a lot of people that are business owners probably feel that same way, letting go of those tasks, so to speak, or kind of maybe that mindset of, I don't know if anybody can do it better than me right now. But to grow and expand, you have to. And other, guests on the show have shared that same statement. So I'm happy to hear you say that, because people listening, like, hopefully that resonates with you as much as it does me, because it's tough to get into that mindset of thinking, gosh, I can do this. I know I can do this, but it's like if Peter wants us to grow, he's got to free himself up, and like he's got to become that cheerleader for that manager of that department. And
right. There's something that happens around 20 employees where you just can't do it all anymore. It's just not possible. And your business is suffering because you're still trying to. And you said it the perfect, nobody can do it as well as me.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the total trap right there. And it's funny because I've got all of my managers are homegrown. They're people who are high performing technicians and customer service people who had a lot of leadership. And so we're kind of developing them. And that's something they're struggling with. It's like, how do I get you, who's my customer service person, to stop picking up the phone every time it rings, because that's what you're used to. And that's and sometimes they feel like it's demonstrating value to their coworkers that they're managing, because they don't want to be the bad boss who's just not doing the work. And so sometimes I'm like, okay, you have to like go over here to this other side of the room and
force them. Yeah.
It's going to fall apart. It's like, it's not. So we all face that, I think. And now I'm in the position of trying to teach them what I had to learn for myself. And I empathize with them, because it's like, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to let go of that stuff. Yeah.
And the best teachers, and I know you have teaching experience now at a college of pharmacy in San Francisco, if you can teach something to someone, you clearly understand it very well yourself. So I think by doing those tasks and growing the business in that way organically, it so well that you can teach it very well to that per individual, and then they can then teach that to people in the future if they were to move up and expand within the company. So I think that's another important piece.
It's a debate. Like, do you bring in a manager who has management experience and teach them your business, or do you bring somebody up? And we've always brought people up. I think the challenge with that is really having them make that quantum shift to being the manager. And I always say it's like jumping off the cliff and finding it's only a foot high, but you just don't know until you jump.
Right.
And that's where we're at. I think if we brought in somebody from the outside, they'd have that management piece, but then it's the other part we'd have to teach them, like our culture, the trust of the employees that be managing. And so we just haven't gone that route. We've always brought up people organically from our staff. So
right. Well, Peter, this has been fun. I think this has been really eye-opening. Hopefully those of you listening have learned a lot from Peter Koshland on what, strategies he's found to be successful. Maybe you'll find them to be successful for yourself as well on whatever endeavor you have. And Peter, I've got one last question for you. It's kind of a fun one. If you need to think for a minute, don't worry, the audience is never going to know how long we paused. But what is a common myth about pharmacy in general that you want to debunk? That someone, even, layperson, pharmacist, people just need to know that this is not a true thing in that industry. Anything that comes to mind for you?
The thing that comes to mind is that pharmacists are buttoned up and boring. I mean, if you ever come to some of our pharmacy conferences, it's like a crazy party. These guys really let loose. So don't let the guy in the white coat behind the counter look. Don't be deceived by the serious look on his or her face, because probably after hours they're partying.
That's great. Those of you that are pharmacists do know about some of those conferences, so they can attest to that. Well, that's great. Well, Peter, man, thank you so much for being on the Eric Mueller Show. This has been a great interview. I really appreciate your time and look forward to chatting with you soon and following the growth of your business. I hope and pray that Koshland Pharm is a name to be reckoned with in the Bay Area in the future. I think it will be. So I appreciate it, sir.
I appreciate that. It's been really fun to talk to you about it. So appreciate the time and the conversation.